Welcome to my sewing room. I don't think you're going to forget this show anytime soon because I'm going to present to you a new technique that I'm positive has never been shown anywhere in the world at any time before. My dear friend Sue Pennington, the one who invented shark's teeth, has come up with a new technique called Cathedral lace windows. Just wait until you see how beautiful they are. These are the Cathedral lace windows done on the lapel of a little dress Sue designed several years ago using ecru, antique gold, and peach. This is the dress done in white with the beautiful cathedral windows with the lace peeking out from behind and a little bit of peach thread which goes around the windows and then embellishes the front of the dress. Of course, I love white on white. Oh, nothing any prettier with the christening dresses. Here are the cathedral windows again, and beautiful white on white embroidery. Not one color, not one touch of color on this dress, just the beautiful white and the lace peeking out of the cathedral windows. Now, doesn't this just look like an Easter dress? Once again, the cathedral lace windows with the lace peeking out and little bows in yellow and green leaves and little tiny pink little flowers and wonderful shades of yellow. And around the cathedral windows, there is yellow thread holding them down. And the cathedral windows do not have to be just for children's clothes. In this very elegant lady's blouse, the windows have been opened, and this time, instead of lace behind the windows, you can see some antique handkerchiefs which have been put in behind the windows. Now, won't you come along with me to my technique boards, and I'll share with you just how to make these wonderful cathedral lace windows. I think you're going to be surprised at how easy these beautiful cathedral lace windows really are to make. First, start out with 2 bias strips and stitch them together right down the middle. Then I'm going to take this off and show you how to fold it. Open it up and fold it where the stitching is right in the middle. That's what I've shown you over here. And press it. Now get a strip of French lace and sew it to one of these bias strips only on one side. Don't sew it through 2 layers, just on one side. Do the same thing with the French lace on the other side. Sew it through only one layer of the bias strip. Now, these are your cathedral windows. You've got to have the rest of the dress attached here. So on the back, and this is the back, sew another piece of fabric over here for your dress bodice and another piece of fabric over here. Now, turn it over to the right side. Now look here, the stitches are still in there. It is still sewn together. And do a pretty decorative stitch along where you made your seams, attaching your dress fabric. The next very important thing is to measure at intervals, whatever intervals you choose, and put a bar tack, a bar tack, a bar tack with your sewing machine, of course, a bar tack, and a bar tack. And then you're going to pull the gathering threads out, the basting threads, not the gathering threads. After you pull the basting threads out, you simply go in here, open up the window, press it back. Let me show you that again. All right, your basting threads are pulled out. Here's a bar tack, here's a bar tack. I go in, I open it up, and my cathedral window is made. Now, over on this piece, you can see how stitching has been done to hold down the cathedral windows, and that's all there is to it. And now, the lady who invented this technique, my very dear friend, and one of the main editors and contributors to So Beautiful magazine, Sue Pennington. Sue, thank you so much for coming to the show today.
Thank you for having me, Martha. It's great to be here. We'll start this technique again. As Martha said, take 2 wide bias strips of fabric. They will be stitched together with a long basting stitch down the center of the strips, and then the strips are pressed open like this. To hold the lace in place, centered over the stitching, I like to use water-soluble fabric glue and just put a very sparing amount of lace over the seam and center the lace over the pressed open seam and let that dry. The next step is to zigzag the edges of the lace to the fabric. Open the fabric up so that you're stitching through only one layer of fabric, and zigzag over the heading of the lace. Again, we're stitching through only one layer of fabric at a time.
Your width is about 2 and your length is about 1.
Yes.
Just a little zigzag through one layer of the bias fabric.
Right. You'll stitch along one side and then open the fabric, and then we'll stitch along this side also. The next step then, after the lace has been zigzagged along both sides, is to stitch fabric on the sides of the bias strip. This is the wrong side of your cathedral lace strip. So the right side is the plain side, and that will be placed on the right side of the fabric. And we'll just stitch a straight stitch on here.
It's pretty nice to have fabric for the dress also.
Yes. That strip doesn't make too much. After you have fabric on both sides, then this edge is finished with just a loose zigzag. We're not rolling and whipping it, but just a loose zigzag to keep the edges from fraying. So we'll zigzag along the edges.
Would you ever use a serger there, Sue?
I haven't. I think a serger might put a little too much thread into the seam, and a zigzag goes pretty quickly. Then those edges are pressed open. The next step then is to mark intervals with a washout marker pen and stitch bar tacks at each one of the intervals. I like to use the button stitching stitch on my machine. You can also just use a zigzag and tie off at each one. The next thing then to do is to pull out that basting thread, and that leaves this seam open. Here again, I like to use my washout glue, and I put just a tiny bit of glue along the outer edge, fold it open, and I take an iron and just press over that lightly, and that glue holds it in place. And I will go up and down one side, pressing open all the edges on one side, and then I'll turn it around and do all the lips on the other side of my strip. The glue really helps hold it in place, much easier than pins, and it washes out very nicely.
Kind of faster too.
Kind of faster, but you have to go easy on the glue.
Does it not damage the sewing machine too?
Not if it's completely dry.
Okay, okay.
The very last thing to do is to straight stitch very, very close to the edge of those little folded bias edges. And I don't use tearaway stabilizer very often, but I have found that it's real helpful to use a tearaway stabilizer under the fabric when you're stitching along there. And I start at one end, go back and forth in an S, turn around, and do the entire strip non-stop stitching. Tear away the stabilizer on the back, and this is a finished strip of the cathedral lace windows.
Sue, that is absolutely fascinating. It is so pretty. Now, you'll have to tell all our viewers what you have nicknamed this.
Eyeball lace.
So now then, all over the world, they'll be calling this eyeball
lace.
This cathedral lace windows, which is the most elegant. And you know what I would like to do? I would like for you to put this pillow over there so everyone can see how beautiful. It doesn't have to be just for dresses. It can be for home decor. What a wonderful pillow. That looks like it's elegant enough to go in the Queen of England's bedroom. As a matter of fact, I bet she doesn't have anything that pretty. Sue, thank you so much for inventing this new technique, as you do so many things, and thank you for all you contribute to So Beautiful and to sewing in the world. And now Sue has something special, Sewing for Baby. Sue has made this incredible day gown for all of us to see today. Now you notice those beautiful little tucks that go to each side, and then a little decorative stitching on this lavender Swiss batiste gown, these pretty little puff sleeves. But the main feature, of course, of this gown are the 2 rows of wonderful panels which have the cathedral lace windows and the prettier darker lavender stitching. What a magnificent gown. Now Sue, I think you have a technique you'd like to share on those pretty little sleeves, is that right?
Yes, Martha. I'd like to show you how to do a very easy elastic application on these sleeves. The first thing that I did on the sleeve was to fold up and press about 1/2 inch to the wrong side of the fabric. Then on the right side, I will place just a piece of straight edging lace right next to the folded edge and zigzag the lace to the folded edge, catching the fabric and the lace in the stitching. After I've stitched lace along the entire length of the sleeve, I'll attach the elastic. And we're going to place the elastic over the top of the raw edge. I will use a wide, well, first I'll start with a straight stitch and anchor the elastic in place. So I'll put, this is 1/8 inch elastic working from the wrong side of the fabric. I mark the length of elastic for my finished sleeve on the elastic with a marker pen. I put the end of the elastic even with the edge of the sleeve right over top of the raw edge of the fabric. And then I'll straight stitch for about 1/2 inch right through the center of the elastic. And I'll back stitch a couple of stitches to secure it and stitch forward again. Then I'll switch to a wide zigzag, a length of 2 and a width of 5. Now this zigzag will clear the elastic. It's going to go on one side and then the other. I don't stretch the elastic as I stitch. Again, I'm keeping the elastic over the raw edge of the fabric, and this will make just a tiny little finished fabric ruffle with lace at the bottom. I'm coming up to my mark on the elastic, but I stitch straight over it. Again, I'm not stretching the elastic at all. I will zigzag all the way to about 1/2 inch from the end of the fabric and stop with my fabric, with my needle in the fabric. I'll lift the presser foot up, hold my hand behind the fabric, and pull the elastic. This gathers the fabric inside the thread casing. Now, do you see my mark for my finished elastic? I'll pull my elastic until the mark is at the edge of the fabric. Put the presser foot down, switch back to a straight stitch, and then stitch through the elastic again to anchor it. Back stitching again a few stitches. When I get to the end, I'm done. I'll cut my elastic off, and there's my pretty little finished sleeve.
Sue, that is absolutely fascinating.
And very easy.
Everything done all in one step.
Yes.
And absolutely beautiful. Sue, thank you so much.
Thank you, Martha.
Your techniques are fabulous, and I guess you can see also they are fun and easy. Sue, they always accuse us of saying sewing so easy, but you know, you and I know it is
Most
easy.
of them are, yes.
And now I have a beautiful doll dress for you. My doll, Cecil Elizabeth, is wearing a perfectly magnificent nightgown. This gown is made out of a blue Swiss flannel, which is so soft. It's finished with a little bias binding at the neck, a tiny itty-bitty baby machine embroidery, entredeaux, and a little bit of trim, a little bit of embroidered trim. Now the sleeves are finished exactly the way Sue has just shown you, with that elastic that you zigzag over it and then pull it up. What I really would like for you to see, and what I'm going to share with you how to do today, is on the bottom of this beautiful little nightgown. It has a hem, as you can see along here, a beautiful, beautiful machine embroidery, itty-bitty tiny flowers, and the very most interesting fake slip. Now, let me just pull this up to show you what I mean, fake slip. That really isn't a slip at all. It's just a little fold over of the nightgown, but it looks as if it's a slip rather than just a fold over. Now, that is what I'd like to share with you, how to do that fake slip. I'm going to use a piece of Victorian embroideries, Victorian eyelets, and there's sometimes these eyelets come with a little bit of, see how that, it just has the jiggy-jagged on the top there? Well, I need to go ahead and trim that off in order to have an easier piece to work with, because what I'm going to do now is finish that edge, and I'm going to do that by doing a machine roll and whip. And you know, all in the world I'm going to do is to guide this right down the middle. I've got a zigzag, a width of about 2.5 and a length of 1. Now what I really need to do is go all the way off of the edge of this eyelet. In other words, it needs to hit the eyelet, go all the way off the sewing machine, and if it won't go all the way off and roll and whip it back, then I probably will need to make the width a little bit wider. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and take it up to 3 and show you that if I go a little bit wider, it will go off a little bit more easily. All you have to do is what we call machine roll and whip by going all the way off and then all the way back on the fabric, and then we'll have a beautifully finished edge on that Victorian eyelet. Now, here is the eyelet that I've already machine rolled and whipped. Now I'm going to take that eyelet and simply, oh, by the way, I've got to hem the nightgown. This is the blue fabric, so I just turn up a hem and straight stitch it. Now, I take the eyelet, which has been rolled and whipped. This is right sides to right sides. In other words, this is the wrong side of the eyelet you're seeing here. I lay it where I want that hem to be, and then I'm going to either straight stitch or zigzag it to the actual nightgown. And I chose here to zigzag it. It'll be a little bit stronger. I think, though, a straight stitch would have done fine. But anyway, it's been zigzagged, still right sides to right sides. Now, the next trick is going to be to fold it over. Remember, this is going to be the very bottom of the nightgown here. But I really want it to look as if we have a slip under there, you know, the fake slip. So I folded it back, and I'm going to do one more step. I'm going to put a little fold that takes it over about 1/4 inch. I'm going to press a little fold over that, which makes it come down about 1/4 inch. Now that's going to be my final touch on the bottom of the nightgown. The next step is to fold the hem back and to come in. Now you see the little fold over there. Let me hold this up and show you one more time the little fold over that's there. Folded down, the little nightgown, that's the bottom of the nightgown. I have this folded back, and then I can either hem the gown by hand or do a machine hem, and it looks for the world as if I have a little slip underneath that gown because of that little fold. And that is what I call a little fake slip. And now we have some hand embroidery for you. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today my very dear friend Kathy Neal. Kathy is one of the most fabulous hand embroiderers in the whole world, and she has brought a beautiful technique to share with you today. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Martha. Thanks for having me. Today I'd like to share with you one of the most treasured and beloved of all embroidery stitches, and that's the buttonhole stitch. Buttonhole stitch isn't just for buttonholes, but it can be used for buttonholes, as we see in this first bonnet here. The buttonhole stitch was used to make buttonholes through which this wonderful ribbon is run, and as you see, it goes across the whole crown of the bonnet to make a nice little insertion for the top of that bonnet. The buttonhole stitch was also used here on this bonnet for flowers. And you see just 3 or 4 buttonhole stitches put together make a wonderful little flower. Also, if you'll notice, a buttonhole stitch can make a beautiful, beautiful edging for a hand embroidered project like this 1920s baby bib. And it goes all around the edge of the little belt as well as around the edges of the bib itself. The buttonhole stitch is a very simple stitch, and I like to think of it as running between 2 parallel lines. Now these can be drawn or imagined depending on how skilled you become with this stitch. As we see, the thread comes out of the fabric on the top line. The thread is always held under the needle, and the needle goes in on the top line right next to where it came out and comes out. The point of the needle emerges on that bottom line. And as you see, every stitch moves over a small amount. Now, depending on how you want the finished look of this stitch, these stitches can be placed very close together, as in the edging on the bib, or they can be further apart. like in this example that I'm stitching now. A very, very wonderful and easy stitch. It can also be used for the edge of blankets, and for this reason it is often called the blanket stitch. Now, Martha, I'd like to show you how I used this buttonhole stitch to finish off this wonderful pair of little booties. Here we see the finished booty, and we have often laughed about how we do, our next big horizon is heirloom sewing by glue gun. Well, here we have heirloom sewing by hole punch. And what I did is I cut out this wonderful pattern from Grandmother's Hope Chest, and we sewed it together. And then, as you see, I got from the craft store a 1/16 inch hole punch as well as a 1/8 inch hole punch. Did the perforations around the top of the shoe, as well as used the hole punch for the eyelets on the toe of the shoe. And to finish off the edge of this little shoe, I sewed the two pieces, the upper to the sole, with a 2.0 machine stitch, and that's a nice little cheat, because then when you do the buttonhole stitch, you go through both layers and you can use the holes of the machine stitching to keep this stitch nice and even. And in order to stitch around here and to make this a lot easier, I have just taken a pin and pinned down the upper so that it's out of the way and I won't catch it in the other part of the shoe. And in our upcoming shows, we'll be talking about making these eyelets and several of these other stitches on these precious wool felt baby booties.
Well, Kathy, that is so sweet, and I absolutely love your hole punch sewing, hole punch hand embroidery. Kathy, that was fascinating. Thank you so much. And now I would like for you to join me in my attic. Kathy Neal has brought this exquisite christening cape and christening dress to share with you. I've seen a lot of beautiful antique clothes, but I can truly tell you I think this is the most beautiful christening dress and christening robe that I've ever seen, cape. The work is hand embroidered, every bit of this, including the needle fillings in the middle, the little circular, the little hearts and the ovals, and the little circles with all these tiny, tiny, tiny embroidered details, and it's very interesting. Each one of these little ovals and circles has a different filling. Absolutely beautiful, the little needle fillings. And all this work was done totally by hand. By the way, the lace was made by hand also, and the dress is Belgium, and I believe she said 1840. Now let me pull the christening cape back so you can see the dress underneath. It has magnificent tiny, tiny folded tucks, more of this incredible work with the fillings, the needle fillings in the middle. Then all the way down the front of this skirt is just incredible work. As a matter of fact, it would take probably a volume to describe what the needle fillings in each one of these pieces. It goes all the way down the front. Let me just pull it out and let you just enjoy looking at this exquisite embroidery, the handmade lace. And I might tell you that the front of this dress is open, as was true for many dresses in that case, and they were called robes because there was actually a dress underneath it, and they really were robes. Have you ever seen such embroidery in your whole life? I believe that probably more than one person embroidered this dress. It would almost take a lifetime to do that much embroidery. And Kathy said she thinks that the ladies all had their specialty of fillings, and possibly different people did the different fillings. Thank you so much for coming to my sewing room today. I have really loved having you with me, and most importantly, I'd like to invite you back next time.